Pick your number.
75% Korean.
76%.
No, stop that!
No, this is fair. This is how you negotiate.
I do the same thing. I'm also Asian.
Well, you blew up. Like
That's what I'd hope, that you'd stand your ground, draw a line in the sand and say, this is a man that worships me.
But the stupidity, her part, of walking into people's homes.
Have you talked to Kim about it? See that, not me.
I'm gonna be really straight up with you.
Hey guys, I'm Sarah and welcome back to my YouTube channel, and more specifically, welcome back to my Etiquette reaction series to the Bling Empire. Some of you love watching it, some of you refuse to watch it, it's very controversial. But I thought that I had to watch all 8 episodes so that I can give you my 2 cents from an etiquette expert's perspective, because as an etiquette teacher in China, I live, work, and play in the world of rich Asians. And so in today's episode 4, I'm gonna share with you the differences between Chinese interpersonal culture and Western interpersonal culture, and what I think that rich Chinese could really learn from Western culture. What are some of the things that you've noticed about Chinese culture from watching Bling Empire? Let me know in the comments below. All right, I'm excited. Here we go.
Totally 100%.
Hi. Oh my goodness.
阿姨你好。
So Kane, when he greets Kelly's mom, Emily, immediately stands up and says,
阿姨你好。
So 阿姨 means auntie and 你好 means hello, as some of you may know. And so why is it such a sign of good manners that Kane did this when he met a friend's parent? Well, you have to remember that in Chinese culture, if you meet somebody who's a generation above you, which a generation is usually like 15 years, but especially if you meet a friend's parents, you never call them by their first name, ever. You always call them, always preface their first name with an auntie or uncle. So it's like Auntie Betty, Uncle Tony, right? You always put things that way. And why? Because if you directly call older people by their first name, Betty, Tony, almost that it shows that you think of them as equal and you're pulling them down. So you're disrespecting them by not giving them that seniorific title. I have plenty of Chinese girlfriends, Hong Kong girlfriends that married white guys, and they actually had to train their husbands, and they told me to not call their mothers by their first name, but to say auntie this, and then after they got married, just to call them mom as well.
Okay, so 我觉得这次来的话是请一个 fortuneteller 大师来给我们看看，因为我觉得我们的现在都是很多 change。
I'm so excited.
Chinese people go to fortune tellers when there are changes in their lives. Usually when something's not going well. So for men, it's when the career's not going well usually, or for women, or for anybody really, when the relationship's not going well. Maybe, you think that you're gonna break up, or you're gonna go through a divorce, or you think the other person has an affair. If it's work, then, maybe if you think this project seems like this deal isn't gonna get done, or blah, 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 then you go and consult a 大师, which 大 means big, 师 means master. So basically Feng Shui master. In this case, Master Yang. So Kelly here is very kind, not only herself, but she's also treating her friends to have a reading done, because a lot of them are in, different categories of distress, whether it's career or family oriented. And so in Christine's case, it's about having kids. In Kane's case, he has a question about career.
这个形状是 M 型，你看，这是 M 型，所以有温柔的一面，独立思考的一面，也是追求一种很崇高的、真正的一种爱情。
Feng Shui masters do more than just help you place objects around the house. There are actually many different ways in which they read Feng Shui. There's 八字, which is knowing your date of birth, and they have this chart. They also can look at your hand, which is what Master Yang did for some of them. For Christine, he figured out that, she has 1 kid and could have 5 kids. And for Kelly, he's reading her face shape, and he says you have an M-shaped face. So 看相. Kan means to look at, xiang means face. Face reading Feng Shui is also a big thing that, we Chinese believe in. And I think actually Westerners do too. So in Chinese culture, we say that, even by looking at a picture of someone, you can tell a lot about them. For example, if you're very beautiful in this life, it means that in your last life, we believe that you were a very good and kind person, right? You gave out a lot, and that's why you're being rewarded with beauty in this life. In general, you read your face from the top down, so it starts from the hairline all the way down. So this is like childhood, this is a middle age, and this is like later on in the age. And so if you have a big forehead like mine, I have a really big, wide, full, like it's like full forehead, that means that I had a happy and healthy childhood, which I did. Now, if you have a nose bridge that's really flat, so a lot of Asian noses have like very flat. I mean, you can see I have a little bit of a nose bridge. Definitely not like a white person's nose bridge, but anyway, some Asians have really flat noses. And so they say for a woman, if your nose is really flat, it means that your husband won't treat you well. You will not be well treated by your significant other. On the other hand, if your nose bridge is too high, then it means you're very dominant and you will mistreat your husband. So, it has to be just sort of the perfect height. Also for women, your temples are very important. If your temples cave in, that it shows that you have bad marriage. And so you want your temples to kind of at least be more full, I guess. One Feng Shui master I met also said, oh, you know when a woman's in a happy marriage or not. I said, how? Well, if her hair is all over her face and she's covering her temples, it means that she's not happy. Whereas, if her hair is up and she's showing her temples, who knows, right? These things. And then, this is old age and all. You don't want to have too pointy of this V line. The more round it is, the more you look like Buddha, laughing Buddha, the more abundance and prosperity you have. So, women who have too sharp of a face, it's considered like 没有福气. Like, no, there's no prosperity and no abundance in that. You want to have, ideal is oval shape, right? Or oval face shape. But anyway, this should not be too skinny. And the more round it is, they say the more your wife brings you money. Anyway, for Kelly, she actually has a pretty flat nose. So I'm not surprised that Master Yang told her partner's not treating her well. And her previous husband also didn't treat her that well either, I think.
I'm apologizing to you now, and I'm
thank
sorry
you.
that I didn't
You don't need
apologize.
to be.
I saw something that made me laugh.
You were being funny. But the stupidity, her part, of walking into people's homes, that's what's unacceptable.
Have you talked to Kim about it?
Bring her over.
I like Anna's style. I think it's very important in life. Well, firstly, when to apologize, which Guy Tang has done. He apologized for discovering the penis pump and making this fiasco out of it. Good for him. Anna accepted it very graciously. So it's important to know how to accept an apology, right? How to give an apology, how to accept an apology, and also to know when you're not being apologized to and somebody's in the wrong, which Kim is in the wrong, to know how to confront that person, not be afraid of confrontation and confront that person in a mature way. But Anna, she knows how to draw boundaries. This person disrespected her. She needs to have a conversation with that person.
Have a seat since y'all brought us together.
Okay. See that, not me.
I'm going to be really straight up with you. You have no right to go into people's houses.
I was just wanting to show him the closet. He decided to go into your bedroom.
Kim,
Can someone speak up? Why is it all like me?
if nobody taught you, I'm going to tell you. Your actions can hurt other people.
But I don't get this song.
Wow, Anna, power to you. Anna, she's firm, she's gentle, she's getting her message across, she's in control of herself. Look at Kim. She's just like in this vicious spiral of losing control and freaking out, and she's just looking worse and worse. Anna is looking stronger and stronger. And so the way Anna knows how to confront people, she has very, very high EQ. It's admirable. I'm learning from Anna. In fact, I would say that the way Anna is handling the situation is very un-Asian. It's actually very American. Whereas Asians usually, okay, we may be upset at a friend, but we don't say anything. And then we just kind of like hide it under the rug, but then it festers and comes out in other ways. It's just very negative and unhealthy for everybody. But Anna is forcing the issue, but in a gentle, honest, open way. And she's not being mean back to Kim in return. Kim's the one being mean to her. I think this is a win for Western culture right now. So whereas Anna is being like EQ queen, Kim is exhibiting all the negative, stereotypical Asians anger issues like, oh, fine, you win. This is not about winning or losing, right? Clearly, Kim has an issue where she cannot admit being wrong. She is very insecure, very defensive. Kim, just apologize.
Just admit, like, okay, it's fine. You know what I mean? Acknowledge it so we can like all move on.
It's not that big a deal. But at the same time, I also know why Kim is reacting this way, because she has an Asian tiger mom, and Asian tiger parents do that to you. They do this thing to the kids, the way they bring them up, because the Asian tiger parents are like that themselves. They can never admit any wrong. They can never admit to losing, all these things. And it's just very negative. I'm sure that Kim has a whole host of issues in her love relationships too, if this is the way she's even handling just like a friend confrontation.
Why aren't you pregnant? Why don't you have a child? Instead of actually seeing the fact that I'm going through rounds and rounds and rounds of IVF treatments, not because
that you didn't need to do in the first place. I understand.
I don't like Christine, but I can't help but feel sorry for Christine because especially like when it's Chinese in-laws and the way they treat their daughter-in-law, they can be in-laws from hell. The Chinese really know how to make your life miserable when they want to make a son-in-law or a daughter-in-law's wife miserable. Feel shame and humiliation and reject you, especially Chinese mother-in-laws when it comes to dealing with their son's wife. And especially ones from different provinces. They also have reputations in themselves. But Christine, I'm gonna send a bit of empathy your way. I'm feeling for you right now, girl. And I think it was really noble that you did a very Chinese thing, which was to take the bullet when it was actually your husband, Dr. Chu's issue, and you saved him face. You didn't let him lose face. You just took that crap from his family who was saying it was your fault for not being able to bear kids. That's a very Chinese thing to do. But you know what? At some point, a man has to make a choice between his mother and his wife. And so I really admire the fact that Dr. Chu, I mean, it finally hits him, but he has that self-awareness to understand this, processes a choice, and then makes his choice. And then there is a heart touching moment where he tells Christine, you know what? It doesn't matter what my parents think. What matters is what we think.
Growing up, I always felt different, always felt out of place. Kids would bully me. I never wanted to be Asian growing up. I always remember wanting to be white. I could be Mongolian.
Asian guys have it tough in the States. Asian guys have it tough outside of Asia. I remember me obviously being an Asian girl, grew up in Hong Kong. Everybody in Hong Kong looks like me. I felt like I fit in everywhere. And then at the age of 14, I went over to the USA to boarding school. Plug for my boarding school, I went to Phillips Exeter Academy. Mark Zuckerberg was a year above me, right? Everyone was white. I mean, New Hampshire prep school. I definitely felt acutely aware of the fact that I looked different from everybody else. Luckily, Asian girls actually have it pretty good in Asia because, you know, I mean, Asian guys like you, white guys like you, Jewish guys really like you, black guys love Asian guys. But if you think about it in terms of desirability, right, versus Asian guy, it's like white girls are not going to date an Asian guy. Black girls, I don't think black girls are that interested in dating Asian guys. You know, the only real option that Asian guys have is Asian girls, but those Asian girls are being in demand like by a lot of other guys too. So I have a lot of Asian guy friends, and especially a lot of ABC, American-born Chinese friends who grew up in Asia, and there's definitely kind of, you know, a little blow to their ego. It's not easy. And that's also why a lot of my Asian friends, they, at some point, the ones from Asia, they choose to come back to Asia. I mean, there is a glass ceiling at some point.
Pick your number.
75% Korean.
76%.
No, stop that!
No, this is fair. This is how you negotiate. I've learned negotiating with my dad, so I've never put the offer first. Let them do the talking first before you go in and close it.
Good on you, Kane. I do the same thing. I'm also Asian. I have a mentor who's Chinese, who also went to Harvard Business School, where I went, but he's like 10 years older than me. Once he was giving me some advice, I think it was on hiring or something. And basically he was like, no, Sarah, you never put the offer first, okay? Because if you put the offer first, you might go too high. If you put it out there too high, then you kind of give yourself away. If you put it in too low, you might have pissed off the other person. You always let them give the offer first. So let's say, for example, you're hiring someone and you're negotiating salary. You let them say how much they think they're worth first, and then you can maneuver from there. Same thing with a deal, an investment deal.
You know how many times I've said that already before, but this time other people were there too. Well, you know, blew up. Like,
that's what I'd hope, that you'd stand your ground, draw a line in the sand and say, this is a man that worships me. Is this our relationship?
Wow. I mean, Drew is so sensitive and so defensive of what other people say about him and so worried about what Kelly is saying about their relationship. And dude, Drew, if your behavior was in line, then you would have nothing to be ashamed of. And I see this in so many abusive guys. I have friends that are dating abusive guys. When I was younger, I dated an abusive guy. In China, domestic abuse is 4 times that higher than USA, and that's reported domestic abuse. Chinese guys, Asian guys do tend to be controlling or abusive because of 5,000 years of Confucian history. You know, every man having a wife and at the same time having a bunch of concubines, and women are really just seen as property of men. There's no respect for women. So if it's been 5,000 years of that, how can you, in like the last 50 years where, you know, now everything's kind of been more westernized and more internationalized and blah, blah, blah. You can't change 5,000 years of the way things were and how men viewed women in 50 years, right? I mean, it's gonna take like a lot more years for it to truly ugly anyway. But, you know, abusive men are all over the world in all shapes and sizes and all sorts of backgrounds and different educational backgrounds. Kelly, you are a victim of abuse and you need to get out of this. And I'm glad later on that she does, with the help of a therapist. If any of you are in abusive relationships or have friends that are in abusive relationships, tell your friends to get a therapist. If they're not willing to get a therapist, tell them to start researching and Googling online traits of a, you know, controlling and abusive boyfriend. And hey, bang, bang, bang. It's better for them to see it black and white online than sometimes for you to just be trying to convince them otherwise.
This whole time I just really reassured you and Daddy, like I had no interest in finding my birth parents. I didn't feel like it was important. But I think there's some validity into it now. But I wanted to ask you if that was like okay though.
I would want to know.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think you should, yeah. I've always been curious.
Wow. Now I know why Kevin is such an amazing human being, because he is the product of being raised by his mother who adopted him, and she is an amazing human being. Just how considerate they are to each other, how much they care about each other's feelings. Even Kevin posing it in a way to his mom is so respectful and kind, saying, you know I told you and Daddy that I wouldn't do this, but now I kind of want to look into it. So I wanted to ask for your permission. Like, is it okay? Right? And I mean, how can a parent be threatened by that when it's posed in that way? And in return, she says, I feel you. I feel what you're feeling. I would want to know too. And you know, at least in Hong Kong and even in mainland China, me and my friends and even the older generation, we always say Chinese families never adopt kids. They only want to have their own blood. Whereas look at all these unwanted little girls, unwanted babies. Who adopted them? White families adopted them. I mean, that is the biggest act of kindness and selflessness that you could ask for. Why is it that in America, when you see American families adopting Chinese kids, it's all little girls? Well, because in the 1980s, in the 1990s, when China was still really, really poor and farmers, you know, were giving up. I mean, they didn't value having daughters. They valued having sons because sons can work in the farm, sons carry on the family name. And so they were giving up all their baby daughters. And so then who came in and started adopting them? American families. And I think that's a beautiful thing, and raising them really as their own. I think that's something that's worth thinking about for Chinese families out there. As for me, my role model is Angelina Jolie. And as you all know, she adopted like the United Nations from around the world. So if I'm not able to have my own kids someday, I'll adopt, because there are enough unwanted children out there. It's an overpopulated world. Why not give an unwanted child a good home? All right, guys, 2 quick takeaways from episode 4, which made me realize that rich Chinese have a lot to borrow from Western interpersonal culture. Number 1, how to confront somebody, how to have a difficult conversation, how to give somebody an apology, how to apologize, and thirdly, how to graciously accept an apology. It's all about being gentle, honest, straightforward. It's not about winning or losing. It's not about getting self-defensive and bitchy. Asian culture isn't good at having difficult conversations, and I've really had to learn this from my white friends and my white therapist. Number 2, when you choose your life partner, sometimes you will have to make difficult choices between your parents if they're overbearing and your life partner, especially when it comes to Chinese in-laws who can be really demanding and controlling. Western families are actually way better at letting their kids grow into adults and make their own choices. Boys, if you want your marriage to work to a woman you love, remember, put her first. Happy wife, happy life. All right, guys, let me know what you think of episode 4, what you think of the difference between Chinese and Western interpersonal relationships. Drop me a comment below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe for the next episode. Bye! Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll be posting a new video each week who have tips and tricks that I think will help all of us lead a better life.